Welcome back to Told by the Fire, a weekly podcast of original stories of strange happenings and ghostly occurrences, told in the dark of the woods. Relax, take a load off. You should be fine, as long as you stay by the fire. For many, being alone in the forest might sound like the most terrifying thing imaginable, but for some, the forest is a place of solitude and relaxation, a place where they can seek and find an escape and solace from whatever it is that troubles them. But what happens when this place of refuge becomes the very heart of evil? Can a person even believe what they have seen, or better yet heard, when they are all alone? These are the questions that the man in our next story may never be able to answer.
A Witness to Silence, written by S.O. Baz. You say I look like I got something weighing on my mind. That this man, sitting here and drinking his beer all alone, has something that he needs to get off his chest. I've got to tell this to someone. You might think that I'm a liar or a drunk or worse after I tell you this. I mean, you really have no reason to believe all or part of what I'm about to say, but that doesn't really matter to me. I know what I saw. This thing was there, and I really don't know how to explain it. It was threatening, but it never threatened me. I was really just a witness. I heard their hopeless and desperate cries, seemingly thousands of them. I was witness to murder and to a killer that could not be stopped. I was powerless to stop whatever this thing was. I witnessed it kill them, a lot of them. Those who were within its reach had no chance of survival. And just like that, it was all gone. It came quickly, showed itself, and vanished just as quickly. It wasn't that long ago, but it feels ageless, like I will never forget this moment. I already know this will be the memory that holds me as I fall into death, but I need to tell someone, or maybe I might sound crazy to you, but I'm not crazy. I know what I saw, or better to say, what I heard. I know it wasn't a trick of the mind, or the forest having its way with my imagination. This was there for way too long. It was not a quick thing. It wasn't some shadow darting back and forth, or a fleeting growl carried on the wind. Maybe if I tell you what I saw and you believe me, you'll know too. There might be something out there on that trail, or at least in the forest close to the trail, and maybe that will save you. Let me just tell you the story and you can decide for yourself. Either it will vindicate me or prove to you beyond a doubt how crazy I have become in such a short time. Maybe you'll think I'm insane. What I have to say doesn't make much sense. I'll readily admit that. All I ask is that you hold your judgment until you've listened to the whole account. I should start by telling you that I've hiked this part of the trail before. I don't come here regularly given the distance from my home, but I've hiked up and down the Appalachian Trail basically my whole life. I've been witness to some strange things, I can tell you that, but never anything like what I just saw. I've done it all, through hikes, section hikes, day hikes, with the dependent factor often being how much time I've got. Today was supposed to be a day hike, with me possibly spending the night and heading back home tomorrow, giving me a little bit of time to rest before work on Monday. And when I come here, I really enjoy listening to music through my headphones at full blast. It just takes me away, giving me the freedom that so many seek when they come to this place. You might say, so, you're not the only one. And it might seem like an insignificant detail, but it was what started all of the things that I'm about to tell you. Like I said, it was just a few hours ago. During that magical time of day when the sun has set, but the light continues to linger. I remember the clouds resting low in the sky. The air was cool, misting on the trail and clouding the view all around me. I don't know if you saw it, but it was why people come to this trail. The branches and leaves of the trees hung low, heavy with the drops of the saturating rain from earlier this afternoon. The path was wet and puddled. I remember I had stepped in one of these puddles and had just begun to feel the cold damp penetrating my sock when I perceived it for the first time. I say that because it might have come before, but this was the first time I heard it break through the 9-inch nails blasting on my headphones. It was a sharp grinding sound, or perhaps a very hoarse roar. I couldn't tell. It was gone as soon as I took my headphones off, almost like whatever was making the sound witnessed me perceive it. But that couldn't be, because the sound was far off. It echoed through the trees. As I stood there, listening to see if I could hear it again, I perceived the sound of people, a great crowd of them. At first I tried to convince myself that it had to be animals, but the more I listened, the more I knew that they were indeed human voices. They sounded like they were in a stadium or something, cheering and chanting at a game, but that didn't make any sense. There wasn't a stadium around here. This was a trail in the forest. I left my headphones off now as I continued on the path. The crowd's noise didn't really go away. It was a constant sound. I swore I could follow the pace of the game, the lulls and the goals. As I continued down the path listening to the sound, the crowd became louder, as if I were getting closer to them. Again, this just didn't make sense to me. I was surrounded by the forest. There was no place for them to be. Maybe there was a soccer field somewhere off the trail and a championship game was being played? I mumbled. As soon as the words left my lips, I realized just how stupid that sounded. I stopped again to listen more intently and figure out which direction the sounds were coming from. It was hard to place though, as it seemed to echo and bounce through the trees. I also noticed that except for the sound, the forest was dead. The chittering of the squirrels, the chirping of the birds, the falling of leaves, it was all gone. It was like the entire place had stopped cold to bear witness to whatever was going to happen next. All of a sudden, the grinding sound returned. It sounded sharper, angrier, determined. With its return, the crowd became louder and fearful. Again, I could not make out any words or phrases, but the cries became panicked. I heard children wailing, and the worst part for me, the clear desperation of parents searching for those children. It was complete pandemonium. The worst part of it all, however, was how the grinding noise turned into a chomping sound. It was a lion, or a shark, or whatever apex predator a person could imagine, savoring its kill. But there was also another sound coming at me. It was the sound of the crowd moving toward me through the trees. The sound of the great number of survivors fleeing and calling out as they did so. They were shrieking back to the ones who had stayed behind, desperately searching for other survivors. But in a strange twist of Darwinian justice, those who continued to search for missing loved ones were the first the creature continued to feast upon as it sought to satiate its endless appetite. The chaotic and shrieking sound of the crowd was running at me with great speed. Perhaps it would be better to say that I was in the way of the sound of these people and their desperate bid to escape. For some reason, I felt as if I was blocking the door of their only escape. I knew the sound was coming directly and that it was doing so with great speed. I felt like the crowd was right on top of me, but they never came. Instead, just as they were about to break out of the trees, the air seemed to distort the sound itself, like some odd physics experiment. It came in with the cries becoming distorted moans that hit me in my stomach. Then just like that, it was gone. Silence. There was nothing. Everything was silent. All existence, seemingly all reality, stood shocked by what had occurred. It was like a great pall had fallen across the world. After the crowd had escaped, the creature took to relentlessly voicing its protest. The large grotesque thing was grinding and filling the valley with its sounds, as an industrial mill might have that existed in this part of the country 100 years ago. It was hard to tell whether it was a creature or a machine. Its clamoring vociferations were equal parts, both flesh and steel. Its roars, if that's what you want to call them, echoed across the valley. The ululations were angry, but also declared its dominance over anything which they touched. They seemed to almost rise from the earth. I could not get a beat on the direction they came from. The creature continued with its bellows, with each becoming more dispirited as the dominant anger faded. Then I could hear its heavy stomping as it searched in desperation for the meal that only a second ago had been a buffet beneath its feet. It let out one more long, defeated and dejected cry. The thing had given up, realizing the meal that had existed only a second ago was nothing but a distant memory. That was it. As the echo faded, so did the creature. Everything was quiet for an everlasting moment, as all of creation around me took in what had just occurred. The forest seemed to hold its breath for one last time. Then it was as if nothing happened. The forest came back to life again. It was like I had awoken from a dream. The color, the wind, the smells, they had all returned. The veil had been lifted once more. The valley seemed familiar to me once again. That strange place with those strange sounds had disappeared. I had been returned. The forest around me came back to life. I listened as creatures scurried through the undergrowth, as birds flew overhead or squawked and chirped from the treetops. The wind blew onto the trail, whipped across my face, and continued on, racing back into the trees. I stood there savoring all of it, breathing it in deeply. But it was the sound of the remnants of the rain that, for one reason or another, really held on to me. I heard it plopping on the ground, falling pregnant from the trees. I had heard it right before this had all started, and for whatever reason, it made me feel safe. I knew that the creature was gone, that it would not come for me. Suddenly I perceived the cold damp against my toes again. With its familiarity, a smile came across my face, feeling like a child who had just come home after a very long absence. Maybe it had been a hallucination of some kind. I remember thinking to myself, but I knew that wasn't true. All at once, this feeling of exposure just came over me. I felt like I was being watched. It might have just been my nerves, or just coming to the realization of it all. Whatever it was, I felt I had to get off the trail, so I ran as fast as my legs could carry me, with the heavy pack I had on my back weighing me down the whole way. I must have looked crazy to the people I passed along the way. A couple of them even called out to me, wondering if I was in trouble, but I just ignored them. There's a lot of foot traffic around here if you haven't noticed yet. Bicycles to dodge, slower hikers, the retirees that aren't going through or anything, they're just visiting for the day and taking in the scenery. It felt like forever, but I made it here to Harper's Ferry and I found this bar. I took this seat and I started drinking, with this thing weighing on me and dragging me down, like a heavy chain whipped around my neck. Fear I might carry it for the rest of my life. You don't have to believe me, and to be honest, I really don't care if you do. You might think I'm drunk, or a liar, or trying to take advantage of you somehow. But I tell you this, something met me out there. I don't know what it looked like, and to be totally honest, I hope I never do. I would just as soon go deaf as hear those sounds ever fill my ears again. Of that, I'm sure.
Thank you for joining us today. Please follow us if you dare. We will continue to create stories regularly and post them here. Until next time, when we gather here again to hear more tales told by the fire.